Welcome to another episode of Ripple Stories, where fairy tales are reimagined with representation. The Fisherwoman and Her Husband, a Grimm's fairy tale reimagined. There was once a fisherwoman who lived with her husband in a hovel, close by the seaside. The fisherwoman used to go out all day long a-fishing, and one day, as she sat on the shore with her rod, looking at the sparkling waves and watching her line, all on a sudden her float was dragged away deep into the water, and in drawing it up she pulled out a great fish. But the fish said, "Pray let me live. I am not a real fish. I am an enchanted prince. Put me in the water again and let me go." "Oh ho," said the woman, "you need not make so many words about the matter. I will have nothing to do with a fish that can talk. So swim away, sir, as soon as you please." Then she put him back into the water, and the fish darted straight down to the bottom and left a long streak of blood behind him on the wave. When the fisherwoman went home to her husband in the hut, she told him how she had caught a great fish, and how it had told her it was an enchanted prince, and how, on hearing it speak, she had let it go again. "Did not you ask it for anything?" said the husband. "We live very wretchedly here in this dirty pigsty. Do go back and tell the fish we want a snug little cottage." The fisherwoman did not much like the business. However, she went to the seashore, and when she came back there the water looked all yellow and green, and she stood at the water's edge and said, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband Big Ego Bill will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." Then the fish came swimming to her and said, "Well, what is his will? What does your husband want?" "Ah," said the fisherwoman, "he says that when I had caught you, I ought to have asked you for something before I let you go. He does not like living any longer in the pigsty, and wants a snug little cottage." "Go home then," said the fish. "He is in the cottage already." So the woman went home, and saw her husband standing at the door of a nice trim little cottage. Come in," said he. "Is not this much better than the filthy pigsty we had?" And there was a parlor, and a bedchamber, and a kitchen. And behind the cottage there was a little garden, planted with all sorts of flowers and fruits. And there was a courtyard behind, full of ducks and chickens. "Ah," said the fisherwoman, "how happily we shall live now." "We will try to do so, at least," said her husband. Everything went right for a week or two, and then Mr. Big Ego Bill said, "Wife, there is not near room enough for us in this cottage. The courtyard and the garden are a great deal too small. I should like to have a large stone castle to live in. Go to the fish again and tell him to give us a castle." "Husband," said the fisherwoman, "I don't like to go to him again, for perhaps he will be angry. We ought to be easy with this pretty cottage to live in." "Nonsense," said the husband. "He will do it very willingly, I know. Go along and try." The fisherwoman went, but her heart was very heavy, and when she came to the sea, it looked blue and gloomy, though it was very calm. And she went close to the edge of the waves and said, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband Big Ego Bill will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "Well, what does he want now?" said the fish. "Ah," said the woman dolefully, "my husband wants to live in a stone castle." "Go home then," said the fish. "He is standing at the gate of it already." So away went the fisherwoman, and found her husband standing before the gate of a great castle. "See," said he, "is not this grand?" With that they went into the castle together, and found a great many servants there, and the rooms all richly furnished, and full of golden chairs and tables. And behind the castle was a garden, and around it was a park 1/2 mile long, full of sheep and goats and hares and deer. And in the courtyard were stables and cow-houses. "Well," said the woman, "now we will live cheerful and happy in this beautiful castle for the rest of our lives." "Perhaps we may," said the husband, "but let us sleep upon it before we make up our minds to that." So they went to bed. The next morning, when Mr. Big Eagle Bill awoke, it was broad daylight, and he jogged the fisherwoman with his elbow and said, "Get up, wife, and bestir yourself, for we must be king of all the land." "Husband, husband," said the woman, "why should we wish to be the king? I do not want to be king." "Then I will," said he. "But, husband," said the fisherwoman, "how can you be king? The fish cannot make you a king." "Wife," said he, "say no more about it, but go and try. I will be king." So the woman went away quite sorrowful to think that her husband should want to be king. This time the sea looked a dark gray color, and was overspread with curling waves and the ridges of foam, as she cried out, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband, Big Eagle Bill, will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "Well, what would he have now?" said the fish. "Alas," said the poor woman, "my husband wants to be king." "Go home," said the fish. "He is king already." Then the fisherwoman went home, and as she came close to the palace, she saw a troop of soldiers, and heard the sound of drums and trumpets. And when she went in, she saw her husband, sitting on a throne of gold and diamonds, with a golden crown upon his head. And on each side of him stood 6 guards, each a head taller than the other. "Well, husband," said the fisherwoman, "are you king?" "Yes," said he, "I am king." And when she had looked at him for a long time, she said, "Ah, husband, what a fine thing it is to be king. Now we shall never have anything more to wish for as long as we live." "I don't know how that may be," said he. "Never is a long time. I am king, it is true, but I begin to be tired of that, and I think I should like to be emperor." "Alas, husband, why should you wish to be emperor?" "Alas, husband, why should you wish to be emperor?" said the fisherwoman. "Wife," said he, "go to the fish. I say I will be emperor." "Ah, husband," replied the fisherwoman, "the fish cannot make an emperor, I am sure, and I should not like to ask him for such a thing." "I am king," said Big Eagle Bill, "and you must obey me, so go at once." So the fisherwoman was forced to go, and she muttered as she went along, "This will come to no good. It is too much to ask. The fish will be tired at last, and then we shall be sorry for what we have done." She soon came to the seashore, and the water was quite black and muddy, and a mighty whirlwind blew over the waves and rolled them about. But she went as near as she could to the water's brink, and said, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband, Big Eagle Bill, will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "What would he have now?" said the fish. "Ah," said the fisherwoman, "he wants to be emperor." "Go home," said the fish. "He is emperor already." So she went home again, and as she came near, she saw her husband, Big Eagle Bill, sitting on a very lofty throne, made of solid gold, with a great crown on his head full 2 yards high, and on each side of him stood his guards and attendants in a row, each one smaller than the other, from the tallest giant down to a little gnome no bigger than my finger. And before him stood queens and duchesses, princes and kings. And the fisherwoman went up to him and said, "Husband, are you emperor?" "Yes," said he, "I am emperor." "Ah," said the woman, as she gazed upon him, "what a fine thing it is to be emperor." "Wife," said he, "why should we stop at being emperor? I will be pope next." "Oh, husband, husband," said she, "how can you be pope? There is but one pope at a time in Christendom." "Wife," said he, "I will be pope this very day." "But," replied the wife, "the fish cannot make you pope." "What nonsense," said he. "If he can make an emperor, he can make a pope. Go and try him." So the fisherwoman went. But when she came to the shore, the wind was raging, and the sea was tossed up and down in boiling waves, and the ships were in trouble and rolled fearfully upon the tops of the billows. In the middle of the heavens there was a little piece of blue sky, but towards the south all was red, as if a dreadful storm was rising. At this sight the fisherwoman was dreadfully frightened, and she trembled so that her knees knocked together. But still she went down near to the shore and said, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband, Big Eagle Bill, will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "What does he want now?" said the fish. "Ah," said the fisherwoman, "my husband wants to be pope." "Go home," said the fish, "he is pope already." Then the fisherwoman went home and found Big Eagle Bill sitting on a throne that was 2 miles high, and he had 3 great crowns on his head, and around him stood all the pomp and power of the church, and on each side of him were 2 rows of burning lights of all sizes, the greatest as large as the highest and biggest tower in the world, and the least no larger than a small rushlight. "Husband," said the fisherwoman, as she looked at all this greatness, "are you pope?" "Yes," said he, "I am pope." "Well, husband," replied she, "it is a grand thing to be pope, and now you must be easy, for you can be nothing greater." "I will think about that," said the husband. Then they went to bed. But Mr. Big Eagle Bill could not sleep all night, for thinking what he should be next. At last, as he was dropping asleep, morning broke and the sun rose. "Ha!" thought he, as he woke up and looked at it through the window. "After all, I cannot prevent the sun rising." At this thought he was very angry, and wakened his wife and said, "Wife, go to the fish and tell him, I must be lord of the sun and moon." The fisherwoman was half asleep, but the thought frightened her so much that she started and fell out of bed. "Alas, husband," said she, "cannot you be easy with being pope?" "No," said he, "I am very uneasy, as long as the sun and moon rise without my leave. Go to the fish at once." Then the woman went shivering with fear, and as she was going down to the shore, a dreadful storm arose, so that the trees and the very rocks shook, and all the heavens became black with stormy clouds, and the lightning played and the thunder rolled, and you might have seen in the sea great black waves, swelling up like mountains with crowns of white foam upon their heads. And the fisherwoman crept towards the sea and cried out, as well as she could, "O man of the sea, hearken to me. My husband, Big Eagle Bill, will have his own will, and hath sent me to beg a boon of thee." "What does he want now?" said the fish. "Ah," said she, He wants to be lord of the sun and moon." "Go home," said the fish. "It is done." And when the wife returned home, she found her husband sitting in front of their old hut again, cleaning some fish for dinner, the sun shining bright overhead, and there they live to this very day. Snip, snap, snout, now this tale's told out. Join me next week for another story of magic and wonder. All stories told by Ripple Stories are retold from copyright-free and public domain books.